You want to build an AI empire in 2026. Not an AI hobby, not a collection of prompts, not a couple of automation tricks that look cool for a week and then die in a folder. An empire is a system that keeps producing value even when you are asleep. A system that compounds, a system that turns uncertainty into advantage. And right now the world is handing you the largest compounding lever we have seen since the internet, because generative AI is not just another software wave. It is a productivity engine with measured gains in real workplaces, not vibes, not theory. When a well-designed AI assistant was deployed at scale for customer service, productivity rose meaningfully, and the biggest lift went to the people with less experience, which tells you something brutally important for business. The winners are not only the most technical, they are the most organized, the most system-driven, the most aggressive about turning workflows into pipelines. Now take that fact and look at the market. Consulting research has estimated multi-trillion-dollar annual value creation from generative AI across business use cases, while major financial research argues it can lift productivity and even global output over time. This is the sound of a new baseline forming under the entire economy. The point is not whether any single number is perfect. The point is that the direction is clear, and the size is big enough that if you build the right machine, you do not need to be the biggest company. You just need to be earlier than your competitors at turning AI into an operating system for your business. So here is the first principle, the one most people miss because they are hypnotized by tools. Your empire will not be built on a model. It will be built on a loop that takes demand, turns it into data, turns that data into a better product, turns that better product into more demand, and then repeats faster than anyone else. Your job is to design the loop, not to worship the model. In practice, that means you pick a domain where speed matters, where decisions are repeated, where outcomes are measurable, and where the customer is already paying for time, accuracy, or risk reduction. Customer operations, sales enablement, compliance-heavy industries, logistics, procurement, recruiting, education, healthcare admin, any environment where the cost of a slow human process is obvious and expensive. This is why so much of the measured value shows up in customer operations and knowledge work. But you are not going to win by saying, we use AI. Everyone uses AI. You win by choosing one narrow battlefield where you can build a monopoly on execution. I want you to imagine Jensen Huang sitting across from you, not selling you a GPU, but pushing a mindset, stop thinking in features, think in factories. NVIDIA has been explicitly framing the modern data center as an AI factory, and their hardware roadmaps are basically the industrial equipment behind that idea. The point for you is not the chip specs, it is the metaphor. A factory has inputs, outputs, quality control, throughput, cost per unit, and constant optimization. You are going to build an intelligence factory for your niche. So you start with your wedge, the one workflow you can dominate. Not 10 workflows, one. And you define it as a unit of value. For example, a sales team does not want an AI chatbot. They want qualified meetings booked. A clinic does not want an LLM. They want claims processed correctly with fewer denials. A manufacturer does not want prompts. They want downtime predicted and parts ordered before failure. That unit is your product. Everything else is an internal mechanism. Now I want to talk about the uncomfortable truth that separates an empire builder from a tourist. The biggest lie in AI business right now is that intelligence is scarce. In 2026, intelligence is becoming cheap. The scarce thing is not intelligence. The scarce thing is trustworthy context, distribution, and integration. This is why NVIDIA has been standardizing deployment into containerized inference microservices and emphasizing that you can run models securely on your own infrastructure. It is an admission hidden in plain sight that the winning layer is deployment and control, not raw model novelty. So the first part of your playbook is this. You build a proprietary context engine. That is your data advantage, and it does not require owning the whole internet. It requires owning the right slice of reality in your niche. Customer interactions, internal documents, SOPs, ticket histories, call transcripts, pricing rules, policy manuals, SKU catalogs, contract templates, exception logs, edge cases, the messy stuff nobody wants to clean. You build pipelines that ingest it, label it, and keep it fresh. You do not need perfect data. You need a feedback loop where usage produces better data. Remember the workplace studies. AI improved outcomes and accelerated learning when people actually used it on real tasks. That is your blueprint. The tool is not magic, the workflow is magic. Then you build what I call the 3-layer moat. Layer 1 is workflow lock-in. You are embedded where the work happens. Email, CRM, help desk, EHR, spreadsheets, Slack, Teams, whatever your niche lives in. If you are not embedded, you will be replaced by a feature. Layer 2 is governance and trust. Audit trails, citations, permissioning, red teaming, human approval gates, role-based access, and measurable reliability. Not because it sounds responsible, but because in real businesses, trust is revenue. A buyer will not adopt a black box that can hallucinate into a lawsuit. And yes, hallucinations exist, and skeptics keep pointing out that hype can outrun practical transformation if you do not build guardrails. You use that skepticism as your advantage because your competitors will sell dreams while you sell outcomes. Layer 3 is unit economics. You measure cost per task, cost per resolution, cost per lead, cost per claim, and you drive it down continuously. This is where modern AI infrastructure matters, because speed and cost are not abstract. They are your margin. Now let us talk about the Jensen angle in your title, because if you are going to invoke that name, you should understand the business logic beneath the mythology. NVIDIA is not just selling chips, it is selling a full stack path from training to deployment to edge devices. And that stack is being designed around scale and efficiency, including low precision inference formats and rack scale systems marketed as a single giant GPU domain. Whether you are a fan or not, the strategic message is clear. The next era belongs to those who can produce intelligence at industrial scale with predictable throughput. For your empire, you will not buy a rack, but you will adopt the same mindset. You will treat compute as a supply chain. You will decide what runs in the cloud, what runs on customer premises, what runs on edge devices, and what runs asynchronously overnight. And you will design your product so that you can swap models without rewriting the business, because models are becoming interchangeable faster than people want to admit. Here is the hook most viewers do not expect, and it keeps retention because it flips the usual fear narrative. You are not building an AI empire to replace people. You are building an AI empire to replace latency. Latency in decisions, latency in approvals, latency in onboarding, latency in knowledge transfer, latency in analysis. In other words, you are building an organization that moves like a machine without losing human judgment. That is the real advantage. And now I am going to open a loop that you will feel in your stomach, because it forces a decision. In 2026, there will be two kinds of businesses in every niche. The ones that turned their workflow into an AI assembly line, and the ones that kept operating as if work is only done by humans with keyboards. The second group will not collapse overnight. It will bleed slowly, and then it will suddenly realize it cannot compete on speed, price, or service quality. That is when acquisitions happen. That is when empires absorb territory. Keep that image, because in the next part I am going to show you exactly how to architect the operating system of your empire, the roles, the stack, the deployment strategy, and the one mistake that kills most AI startups before they hit product market fit. You do not scale an AI empire by hiring more people who write prompts. You scale it by building an operating system that makes average people perform like elite operators. This is the same pattern the research keeps hinting at. When AI assistance is introduced into a real workflow, the largest gains often show up where experience is lower, because the tool compresses the skill gap and standardizes quality. That is a business weapon. So your playbook in this part is structure. You need 5 systems, and if one is missing, your empire leaks value. First system is the task registry. Every repeated outcome in your business becomes a named task with inputs, outputs, constraints, and success metrics. Not a vague goal, a task. Qualify lead, draft proposal, extract contract risks, triage ticket, summarize call, generate follow-up, forecast demand. Each task has a definition, because without definitions you cannot automate, you cannot measure, and you cannot improve. Second system is the context layer. This is where most people fail, because they think retrieval is a feature. Retrieval is an organization. You need document ingestion, chunking, metadata, access controls, freshness checks, and citations. You need the system to know what it knows and what it does not know. You need it to refuse cleanly when context is missing. This is not optional. In business, a confident wrong answer is worse than no answer. Third system is the human gate. The empire mindset is not full autopilot. It is controlled acceleration. You decide which tasks can run automatically and which require approvals. For example, an AI can draft an email, but maybe a human must approve before sending. An AI can propose a compliance summary, but a specialist signs off. The trick is to design a progression. As the system proves reliability, the gate moves. That is how you compound. Fourth system is evaluation. Not vibes, not user anecdotes. You create test sets for each task, known cases, edge cases, failure modes. You run weekly evals, you keep score. If you cannot measure it, you cannot defend it, and you cannot sell it. Fifth system is deployment. This is where the NVIDIA-style AI factory concept becomes practical for your audience. You want a product that can run where the customer needs it, with security and control. That is why the industry is pushing toward portable, containerized inference services and standardized microservices for model deployment. It makes the product feel like software again, not like a fragile demo. Now, the most powerful business move in 2026 is to stop selling AI and start selling a guaranteed throughput. When you sell AI, you invite skepticism. When you sell throughput, you sell economics. You say, we reduce resolution time by this amount. We increase tickets handled per agent by this amount. We reduce denials by this amount. You are not promising intelligence. You are promising a measurable business outcome. And that is exactly the type of value the largest reports focus on. Here is how you build the actual product path, step by step, in the simplest, most aggressive order. Step 1, pick a beachhead customer profile. Not a market, a profile. The ones in pain, the ones already spending money on the problem, the ones with a decision maker who can say yes without a committee. In early empire building, committees kill you. You want the buyer who wakes up with a problem. Step 2, build a single task end to end. One task that produces money. Do not start with a general assistant. General assistants are replaceable. You start with a narrow agent that lives inside an existing tool, pulls context, proposes an action, and logs everything. Step 3, charge for the outcome, not the seat. Seat-based pricing becomes a trap when automation increases productivity per person because customers will want fewer seats. Outcome-based pricing lets you scale with the value you create. Step 4, build your data flywheel by designing the interface so the user is constantly correcting and approving. Every correction becomes training signal. Every approval becomes reinforcement. Every exception becomes a new edge case to add to evals. This is how you create the compounding advantage that a generic model cannot replicate. Now let us pull Jensen into this, but in a way that is useful, not worshipful. NVIDIA's announcements around Blackwell emphasize extreme scale, fast interconnect, and low precision inference, all aimed at making trillion parameter class inference more practical and more economical in real time. Whether your audience knows the specs or not, it signals something to your business plan. The cost per unit of intelligence keeps dropping, and latency keeps dropping, and that means your product design should assume you can do more in real time next quarter than you could last quarter. Your roadmap should be built around that curve. So here's the empire move. You redesign your niche around real-time decision loops. You stop waiting for nightly batch jobs. You stop treating data as static. You build systems where the AI watches events as they happen and proposes actions immediately. That changes the customer's behavior. It becomes addictive in the good way because decisions get easier. Now, the one mistake that kills most AI startups is that they try to outmodel the model companies. They build a new model, or they fine-tune too early, or they chase benchmark scores. Meanwhile, they ignore distribution and workflow integration. If you want to survive, you do the opposite. You treat models as commodities and workflows as assets. You treat evaluation and deployment as your moat. And here is the part that gets real. Because building an empire in 2026 means you must navigate fear, regulation, and internal resistance. Employees will think you are trying to replace them. Customers will worry about security. Leaders will hesitate because they fear choosing the wrong stack. Your response is not motivational. Your response is operational. You create a pilot with a clear boundary. You measure it, you show results, you expand. You do not argue, you demonstrate. At this point, most viewers will ask, what about jobs? What about displacement? You do not need to moralize, you just tell the truth that keeps people watching. The competitive advantage is shifting to the organizations that learn faster. Large-scale studies and analyses keep pointing to productivity as the main channel, and the transition can be disruptive, but the direction is not optional. Now I am going to open the next loop, because this is where your title becomes a business playbook, not a motivational speech. There is a second empire forming inside AI that most people are ignoring. It is not text, it is not chat, it is physical AI, robotics, simulation, digital twins, the connection between decisions in the real world. NVIDIA is explicitly investing in foundational models for humanoid robotics, robotic simulation platforms, and edge compute for robots. That tells you where the next compounding frontier is heading. The boundary between software and operations is collapsing. In the final part, I am going to show you how to position your business so it can ride that wave even if you never touch a robot, by using the same core idea: simulate, standardize, deploy, and compound, and I will give you the exact empire map, the 3 products you build in sequence, the partnerships you need, and the 1 strategic move that turns a niche tool into a platform. If you want to win in 2026, you must stop thinking like an app builder and start thinking like a platform builder in training. Not because you are arrogant, but because the market will force you there. The businesses that survive will not just automate tasks, they will become the place where work is organized. That is the difference between a tool and an empire. So here is the empire map. You build 3 products in sequence, each one unlocking the next. Product 1 is the wedge agent, the narrow system that does one painful thing and produces money. It lives inside an existing workflow, it pulls context, it proposes actions, and it logs every decision. It becomes the fastest way to complete that one task. Product 2 is the control plane, the dashboard that managers love because it shows throughput, quality, exceptions, and costs. This is where enterprises start trusting you because you are not a black box. You are a measurable machine. You show evaluation scores, failure categories, and human review rates. You create the language of reliability. Product 3 is the marketplace layer, where the customer can add new tasks using the same infrastructure. This is where you stop being a vendor and start being an ecosystem. You provide a standardized way to deploy new models and services securely and quickly. This is exactly why the industry is moving toward pre-built inference microservices that can run on GPUs in different environments. It makes expansion cheap. Now, you might be thinking, I do not have NVIDIA resources. You do not need them. You need the pattern, standardized deployment, standardized evaluation, standardized permissions. Then expansion becomes a product decision, not an engineering rewrite. This is also where the idea of sovereign AI becomes relevant, even if you are not a government. Sovereign AI is a simple business concept. Do you control your intelligence, or are you renting it? Enterprises increasingly want to keep data secure and maintain control over where models run. When you build your product to support that, you move up market. And you do not need to invent the infrastructure, you need to align with what the ecosystem is already providing. Portable deployment and security-focused runtimes. Now let us bring Jensen's most misunderstood line into the center of your playbook. The headline version is, nobody needs to learn to code anymore. Whether people agree or not, the market signal is that interfaces are moving toward natural language and high-level intent. That means your buyers will increasingly expect to describe outcomes, not configure systems. So your product should not feel like software, it should feel like delegation. Here is how you design delegation without chaos. You create roles, not user roles like admin and viewer. AI roles, researcher, drafter, reviewer, executor. Each role has permissions and boundaries. The researcher can search and summarize internal sources. The drafter can produce outputs but cannot publish. The reviewer can approve, the executor can trigger actions. This simple separation prevents disasters and makes your product acceptable to real businesses. You also build a habit. Every output includes traceability. Where did this come from? What sources? What policy? What data? Not because it is fancy, but because it makes your system defensible in a meeting where someone is trying to kill the project. Now we go to the physical AI lesson, because it will sharpen your strategy even if you stay purely digital. The reason robotics is hard is not only hardware, it is data and safety. You cannot let robots learn by breaking the real world. So you simulate, train in a digital environment, then deploy. That pattern is being pushed hard through robotic simulation and foundational models for robots, including initiatives and platforms NVIDIA has publicly announced. Your business should copy that pattern. Instead of letting your AI learn by breaking customers, you create sandbox simulations. You replay historical tickets, historical claims, historical calls, historical contracts. You let the AI practice inside a safe replay environment. You score it. Then you deploy with gates. That is the same basic idea as training and simulation before touching the real world, and it is how you scale without blowing up trust. Now, the most aggressive empire move is partnerships. You do not partner for logos. You partner for distribution. You want 3 kinds of partners. First, a system of record partner in your niche. The CRM, the help desk, the EHR, the ERP, the platform where work already lives. You integrate deeply, and you become the intelligence layer on top. Second, a compliance partner, because trust is your biggest sales accelerant. If you can show that your system meets the buyer's security reality, deals close faster. Third, an infrastructure partner, not because you need their hardware, but because you need deployment optionality. Customers want to run models where they need them, and the ecosystem is already building standard ways to do that. Your product should be able to ride that, not fight it. Now, the moment you have a wedge agent and a control plane, you are sitting on the edge of the platform cliff. The cliff is terrifying because it means you must choose a strategy, remain a narrow product and get copied, or become an operating system in your niche and absorb new workflows before someone else does. This is where you do the thing most founders avoid. You build internal tooling first, and you sell the side effect. You take your own operations, sales, support, onboarding, invoicing, and you run them through your AI task registry, your eval system, your role-based delegation. You become your own first customer, and then you sell the results as a case study that is impossible to ignore. And here's the last psychological lever, the one that keeps retention, because it is personal and it is true. If you are building an AI empire, you are not competing against companies. You are competing against compounding. The company that integrates AI into its workflows today becomes more productive, learns faster, captures more data, improves its system, and then accelerates again. That is why adoption and productivity research matters, because it shows the mechanism of compounding in real organizations, not in theory. So your business playbook to win in 2026 is not complicated, it is disciplined. One wedge, one measurable outcome, one context engine, one evaluation system, one deployment strategy that customers can trust. And then you expand task by task until your niche starts to feel like it cannot function without you.